Hello once again everyone, Frank DeWara here with the End Times Research Ministry. Today is April the 25th, 2017. And today I'm going to be discussing some issues about the third temple that's coming. Now I know that there's some people who are teaching that there will be no third temple built, but that's not what the scriptures tell us, and I'm going to show you where it is in the Bible that it shows us that a third temple will be built. And it's really important because when this third temple is built and this prophecy is fulfilled, what this tells us is the Antichrist is already on the scene. And he's going to assume power for the period of 7 years. So it's really important to know where it is in the Bible that the Lord in the Old Testament and Jesus in the New Testament shows us about this third temple that is coming and what's associated with this third temple. Very important information. And before I get into the heart of the matter, just let me remind you to go over and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll see that red subscribe button. And when you press that red subscribe button, this bell shows up. And a lot of people don't know what this bell is for, and it's neglected. When you go to someone's YouTube channel, if you like the videos that they're putting up and you want to have notification, this is what this bell is for. Just in case you are new, all you have to do is this. Click that bell. Every time I make a YouTube video, you're going to get notified. And I'm posting all of my YouTube videos over to my website at endtimesresearchministry.com. If you want to send your loved ones or your friends over there to not only watch the videos that I'm making, but also to be able to tap into my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, which they can get today for free. There's no strings attached. I've never asked anybody for anything in this ministry, never charged anybody for anything, and that is a free gift to you. The Lord gave us a free gift through the salvation that He gave to us on that cross, and I'm returning His work for free. So now let's get into the material that I want to show you, showing that this third temple is coming. So to begin with, I want to give you a word origin, which is really important. And this word is Shabbat. Now the definition is a period of 7 days, years, heptad, week. And the reason why I'm giving you this information is because the next scriptures that I'll be giving to you from the book of Daniel, he talks about a period of 1 week. Now we know from other places in the scriptures that the week that is being described in Daniel is actually a period of 7 years. Each day is 1 year. That's why I'm giving you this information, a definition. So as we get into Daniel, when it says for 1 week, he's talking about 7 days, or each day equals 1 year, which means that it's a period of 7 years. And this 7-year period of time is the end of a time period that God is dealing with the nation of Israel, which his entire time is 490 years. So, very simply, 1 week is a period of 7 years. Now, let me give you some illustrations what I'm talking about here. First of all, let's take a look at Numbers chapter 14, verse 34. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days, you explored the land. You will suffer for your sins and know what it is like to have me against you. So notice what he says. 1 year for each of the 40 days. That equals 40 years. Then in Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6, he says this. And when you have completed them, lie again on your right side. Then you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have laid on you a day for each year. Very plainly spoken that we know what he is talking about when he's talking about these periods of 1 week. How many days in a week? 7. 7 days, 7 years. Simply as that. Now, we're going to get into Daniel. Daniel 9:24 through 27. And verse 25 says this. And remember, we're talking about the third temple that's going to be rebuilt. Know therefore and understand that from going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. And 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So here's the simple breakdown of it. There was actually 49 years from the time the commandment went forth to rebuild those walls, March 14th, 445 BC, as recorded in the Old Testament, the book of Nehemiah. So we had 49 years that took the time to build the temple. And then there was a period of 62 that you'll be seeing in the Daniel prophecy. And keep in mind that each week is a period of 7 years. So you have 62 of them and equaled 434 years. So from the time of the commandment to go forth and build, 445 BC, until the time that Jesus Christ walks into Jerusalem was 69 times 7, or, now we're dealing with years, 483 years, to the very day that prophecy was fulfilled when Christ walked in. And of course, we know through the prophecy that Jesus was going to be crucified, and he was. So that prophecy was fulfilled exactly the way it was prophesied. So in verse 26 it says this, and after 62 weeks, which I just showed you, the building of that temple, and the time that Messiah would become, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. In other words, he did it for all mankind, anybody who believed in him and accepted him, not just believed, but accepted him as the Messiah, they would be saved. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and, get this, sanctuary, all right? Destroy the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, and until the end of war desolations are determined. Now, the sanctuary that they're talking about is actually God's temple. Where's the temple? East Jerusalem. Now, the second temple was destroyed by Titus in 70 AD, as prophesied by Jesus Christ before he went to the cross. In verse 27 of Daniel, it says, and he shall confirm the covenant. Of course, he's talking now about the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. This 1 week again, what is the 1 week? 7 years. And in the midst of the week, in other words, in the middle of the 7 years, 3.5 years, he shall cause the, get this, sacrifice and oblation to cease. In other words, he's going to stop the sacrifices that the Jews begin again. So, just take a look around. Are the Jews practicing their sacrifices right now? Preparing for the real thing in the rebuilt temple? Yes, no doubt about it. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, referring to the Antichrist again, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So when you know what the week is, you can really understand this prophecy to the max. There's no question about it. So Daniel's prophecy covered from the time the wall and the city was going to be built until the Messiah came in. And then he goes to the time that the Antichrist would be coming, and that he was going to do something that showed us that this temple was definitely going to be built again. It has to be, because that prophecy told us that in the middle of the week, in the middle of that 7-year period, the Antichrist was going to go into that temple and do what? You'll be seeing that. Now let's take a look at Matthew 24:15. These are Jesus' words. He says this, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. Who spoke about that? Obviously Daniel, just went over it. He says, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the, where? Holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. So if you want understanding, you just have to believe in what Jesus said. That this man of sin that Daniel talked about would be going in to this temple. And obviously he hadn't done it yet while Jesus was alive. It was a prophecy for the future. And so when he talks about stand in the holy place, he's referring to, guess what? The Jews rebuilding their temple that was destroyed back in 70 AD by Titus. Now, I'm not going to cover it right now, but when you go into my other videos, you'll see all of the information, how the Jews have prepared for the rebuilding of the temple, and those sacrifices that Daniel talked about that the Antichrist would stop. Now let's move to Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. It says this. This is really important because it's a message from Jesus Christ. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the, guess what? Temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. So John is told to measure. And it's really important because why would he say that? Well, he's given us indication of there's going to be a measurement where this third temple is going to be built. And a lot of people think that it may be that some kind of peace covenant that is signed, or this one that Daniel refers to, about the one that will be confirmed for the period of 7 years, it just might be that the Jews build their temple right next to the Dome of the Rock. Possibility, not going to rule it out. Now, some people think that the temple was not built on the Temple Mount, but it was built in an area near the Temple Mount. But whatever the case is, there's really no need for a temple. Not at all, because Jesus Christ gave the sacrifice once and for all. So, does it really matter if the temple was built on or near the Dome of the Rock or in some other place? It's still something that shouldn't be built in the first place. But in order to fulfill prophecy, the temple will be rebuilt. Now, Daniel 11:31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and they shall take away the, guess what? Sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that makes desolate. In other words, Daniel again refers to this sanctuary. We know that that's the temple, and the sacrifices that the Antichrist will stop. So there's plenty of scriptures that shows us that not only is the sanctuary, the holy place, this temple, that not only is the temple going to be built, but obviously they're going to have the sacrifices, which Daniel alludes to again in Daniel 11:31. Now, the reason why I'm giving this information is because for the past couple of months, we've seen a lot of information coming about the possibility that this third temple is going to be built soon. And the possibility that the Jews who've been practicing these sacrifices for the past 5 years, that they will sacrifice in the temple soon. So I told people that are coming to my YouTube channel, subscribing to my YouTube channel, that whenever I get news about the third temple, I'm going to give you that news. And today there was some other news that came out, breaking Israel news. Thousands expected on Temple Mount for Jerusalem Liberation Day. This was a photo that was taken place on October 23rd, 2016. You'll see the Dome of the Rock. And obviously there's a good chance that the temple will be built right next door to it. The temple organizations expect that the upcoming Jerusalem Liberation Day, May 13, will see a record rise in the number of Jewish visitors to the holy site, the largest since the destruction of the temple 1,947 years ago. Back in 1967, General Mordecai Ger made his immortal declaration. Beata you, the Temple Mount is in our hands, only to be reversed a few hours later by then Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, who handed over the keys to the most sacred Jewish site to the Jordanian waif. The headquarters of the Temple Mount organization believe that the presence of 2,000 Jews on the hallowed ground will go a long way to making that brave Israeli general's statement a reality once again. So they're expecting to take over, or to at least be able to go up there and pray just like the Muslims. Now, when you go over to this news article, you'll see a video there of the actual footage in 1967 when the Jewish army was going into Jerusalem and captured it for the first time in almost 2,000 years. A major, major prophecy for the last days. There's no denying it. According to the headquarters of the temple organizations, the past year, the Jubilee year for the liberation of the Temple Mount back in 1967, has already seen a record in both quantity and quality of Jews return to their temple. By quality, the group means ascents to the Temple Mount following a dip in the ritual bath in keeping with the Jewish law. With a dramatic increase in the number of Jewish visitors, the police have begun to change its attitude towards the Jews on the Temple Mount. And if you go back to my previous videos some years ago, you will see that I told people in my videos, this is exactly what you should be looking for, and it's already here. Continuing, the group said in a recent statement to its members, noting that the long waits at the entrance of the mount have disappeared and the restrictions on the size of the Jewish groups hardly exist anymore. And this is making the Arab world very, very nervous, because they don't want the Jews to go up there and pray. They want to keep them away from that area. Even the outrageous directive against prayer on the Mount is no longer enforced against those who pray non-discriminatively, the group stated. That was another one of my videos, probably a couple years ago, that I said that you'll see the Jews be able to pray just like the Muslims. And if we're living in a world where free speech and freedom of religion should exist, everyone should have the right to worship the way they see fit. So why has it been all these years that the Jews have been focused on to keep them away from actually participating in worship the way they believe that they should be able to participate? That's because the timing wasn't right, and we're getting closer and closer to the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, and the timing for that is approaching. Jerusalem is always at the top of our joy, and the top of the top is the Temple Mount, the statement said. The Temple Mount is on the news agenda as benefits the heart of all the world. Jews ascend every day to the Temple Mount in holiness and purity. Even the vocal opponents of the temple help bring the return to the temple to the top of the national agenda. As to the numbers, according to the statement, last Passover about 2,600 Jews ascended to the Temple Mount, almost double the number the previous year. They joined the hundreds of rabbis and tens of thousands of rank and file individuals who are ascending to the Temple Mount in keeping with the Halacha, Jewish law, throughout the year. The headquarters of the temple organizations and the Temple Mount, yeshivas, say that they intended to push those numbers further up on Jerusalem Liberation Day. Last year, on the celebrated day following the campaign that involved rabbis and celebrities, more than 1,000 Jews arrived at the Temple Mount. This year, the headquarters say, we aim to double the number of Jews and bring 2,000 Jews to the Temple Mount in holiness and purity. Now, in closing, I want you to take a look at this video, in case you don't go over there, because I want you to see a prophecy that is right before your eyes in history. And that history just propelled us a giant step closer to the rebuilding of the temple in the last days. Watch this video as the Jews make their way into East Jerusalem for the first time in almost 2,000 years.
אנחנו הולכים ומעמיקים לתוך העיר העתיקה. הר הבית בידינו, כאן תלמיד, הר הבית בידינו. חירות סעיף כיפה לו, כל הכבוד, כל הכבוד. חדל, חדל, כל הכוחות חדל. תחנות תלמיד, כאן תלמיד, כל הכוחות חדל, תבוא. תחנות תלמיד, כל לקוחות חדל, אני אומר שנית, כל לקוחות חדל, עבור. כאן קודקוד 89, האם מוטה מדבר, עבור. הר הבית בידינו, כאן תלמיד, הר הבית בידינו, עבור. תחנות תלמיד, כל לקוחות חדל, אני אומר שנית.
I'm going to stop it there because for the first time in almost 2,000 years, the Israeli flag flying over Jerusalem. Now let's keep in mind, in 1967, the Arab nations attacked Israel. Israel didn't attack the Arab nations. And because of that attack, Israel has control over Jerusalem. Now I know that the Jews want to live in peace. And I would love the Jews to be able to live in peace without having to worry about somebody trying to stab them, run them over with cars, sending missiles into the territory. But I would also love to see the Arabs, the Islamic people, live in peace as well. And the reason why I say this is because the Lord told us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So if there is peace in Jerusalem, somehow the Jews and the Islamic people will be able to have coexistence together. But we know the peace of Jerusalem is going to come when? It's going to come when Jesus Christ comes back and he takes his place as king on this earth. That's when Jerusalem will have peace. That's when there'll be peace in North Korea. There'll be peace in Iran. There'll be peace in whatever country that you're in. Peace will exist at that time when Jesus Christ steps on the Mount of Olives and when he takes control of all the governments worldwide. That's the real peace that is coming. And the only way that you're going to be partaking in that real peace is to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Because we do know that those people who accept Jesus Christ will be at some point leaving in the rapture of the church. I don't care if you're a pre, mid, or post. Doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is you love Jesus and you're ready to go. Whenever Jesus wants to take us out, it's okay by me. And I hope it's okay by you as long as you are ready to be taken whenever he calls. So love your neighbor as yourself. That includes the Arabs, all the Islamic people. That's the eyes of Jesus Christ. That's what he wants from us. And just pray for those who hate each other in the hope that they will find peace through Jesus Christ because he promised he's coming back. And just like all these prophecies have already been fulfilled about Israel, the Jews coming back into the land, the rebirth of Israel, and all of the rest of the prophecies that the Lord gave to us about the last days, you can count on the prophecy that Jesus Christ will step on the Mount of Olives, which I believe will be in the very near future. This is Frank DeMore with the End Times Research Ministry. God bless.